When we get started, we have a quorum present and we'll call the meeting to order. Today is April 25th. It's 7:05 p.m. We are conducting this meeting in a hybrid format. Members of the public who wish to participate the meeting may do so in person or via Zoom. The meeting is being recorded and will be made available later in case anybody wants to review it. So we have a full agenda tonight. Yes.
You need to identify your members who are participating.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So why don't we start with Brent?
Brent Nelson, present.
Ed Vasella, present.
Bob Swanee, present.
Steve Callahan, present.
Matt Rutger, present.
Peter Michelson, present.
And Sharon,
Sharon Tatro participating remotely.
Jill.
Jill Rafter participating remotely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Jeremy will be absent tonight. He won't be with us. So our agenda tonight has a number of items. We'll get through some minutes. We're going to spend some time with Mark talking about some legal matters. And then we have 5 articles that we want to talk about and get through and vote for the town meeting. It's the garage, citizen petition on compensation transparency, the school committee public hearing, the water conservation private well restriction, and the creation of a groundwater protection committee. So that's our agenda. There are 3 sets of minutes. We're all caught up here. So 3 sets of minutes: March 28th, April 3rd, and April 11th. I guess I'd take if anybody have any comments or questions on any of the minutes.
Good.
That they were very well done, actually. Yeah. Take a motion then.
Motion to approve the minutes of March 28th, April 3rd, and April 11th as submitted.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
Yeah, yes,
Yes.
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 Karen,
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
okay, Jill,
Yes.
okay, great. Motion carries. Okay. Why don't we start off? Mark, you can come sit up at the table here. I asked Mark to come to our meeting tonight to spend some time with us and educate us on article formats and related motions. And talk about also we have one article that is going down a charter amendment path, talk about some of that. But just to sort of educate us in general on when does what's the difference between an article and a motion? What's a binding versus non-binding article, and even what's the difference between a non-binding article and a referendum? So I will turn it over to you.
All right, I'll make some brief comments and then I'll just go and open any questions you might have. So first of all, the format, the context, legal context, is very little legal specification. Statutorily, it's chapter 39 of the general laws. The half a dozen sections, virtually none of them really get into any detail procedurally. You're then left to whatever your charter and bylaws provide in terms of how the town meeting proceeds. And again, in Medfield, we have very little in detail by way of detail in the charter or the bylaws, other than the fact that town meeting time is the parliamentary manual, which is used as a quote-unquote guide. So it's not Robert's rules. We're not under Robert's rules. We use town meeting time as a guide. The moderator conducts the town meeting, and then again, in the absence of the statute, is very broad authority to the moderator. And in the absence of something in the charter or bylaws to the contrary, the moderator has very broad discretion, and that is the case here. That being said, he is required to be impartial and fair. Beyond that, it's left to him to run the meeting and to rule on matters that may come up in the course of discussion. Let's briefly, this is in the moderator's guidance. I know he's going to make this feel at town meeting because he always does, but it bears repeating because people still don't get it. And that is the difference between the warrant article and motion. The warrant and the articles that make up the warrant, the purpose is notice. They are essentially a framework for the town meeting. The town meeting is limited to what is set out in the warrant in terms of articles and what's fairly under each of the articles. However, as the meeting proceeds and takes up an article, action is on a motion. It's not on the article itself, it's on a motion made under that article. That's a distinction. It's very important. A lot of times you don't get it because the motion simply tracks the article. Move such and such as printed in the warrant. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. The motion can be considerably narrower. It cannot be significantly broader. So, and everybody, there's hypothetical that you can't, if the article states a dollar amount, for instance, that the motion can't be for $1 more than that. That's not true. That being said, if you have a specified amount, at some point you're going to reach outside the motion if you try to increase the amount significantly. They actually ask for $100,000 and suddenly it's up to $1 million. That's a problem. So that's the framework.
Quick question.
Sure.
Is that a problem because budgetarily it's a problem, or is that a problem because it's out of order and you can't consider
It's hypothetically a problem because a lot of this falls under the no harm, no foul. Nobody challenges it, either at the time of the meeting or subsequently. And taxpayers sue something like that. None of it's self-enforced. Like on budgetary items. So hypothetically, it will be subject to the challenge. But it may not be. Anyway, generally speaking, the moderator and the town meeting deals with process, procedure. And whether something's legal or illegal is only secondary. Yeah, the focus of the meeting is on proper process and procedure. So the authority of the town meeting. Obviously, essentially, the town meeting has budgetary authority. With asterisks as to the school committee, where it has bottom line authority, but not line item. Other than that, it has authority to approve particular projects. In addition to the budget, it has authority to authorize budgets and expenditures. It has authority to create and amend town bylaws within the authority where the town is permitted to have bylaws. It plays a part in, or it may play a part in a charter event. But it's not the final say in that case. When it comes to the town meeting legislating, at some point there are limits on its authority. And that, the ultimate determiner on that is the Attorney General's office, municipal law unit. So following the town meeting, town clerk gathers up all the articles that involve any kind of legislation and puts a packet together and submits it to the Attorney General's office. They then have 90 days to review and approve or not. If they say that something is not, and their standard isn't, if it's a good idea, bad idea, whatever, their standard is it consistent with state and federal law? So within that framework, there might be a lot of discretion. It might be, if it's interpreted one way, you're okay, but another way, no. In which case, instead of just a denial, you'll get a, we're approving this, but with a caution. And either don't do this or consult with your town council in the application. If they're the final say, unless somebody wants to take it to court, the chances of prevailing in the case of an adverse Attorney General determination are fairly remote because they're a very specialized and experienced and highly qualified group of legal people. And so the court's going to defer in all likelihood to their expertise. That's kind of the overall framework. So if the town, and so as a collateral point, and getting back to what Steve alluded to, if you don't have authority to do something at the town meeting, that would be a situation where you might put it in front of the meeting as a sense of the meeting, an informal or non-binding vote. It's not going to have a legal effect, but it would give guidance to whoever the decision makers are. Otherwise, as I said, it's not up to the moderator generally to determine whether the meeting has the authority or not. In consultation with myself as a town attorney, he may be concerned that the town meeting does not have authority and would indicate that the vote's not going to be legally valid, will only be a advisory or sense of the meeting type of vote. Or ultimately, as I've said, when it gets the Attorney General for review, they'll make the determination. Procedurally, on the other hand, the moderator has authority to declare a motion out of order. So we can't, generally speaking, declare a motion out of order because he views it as quote unquote illegal. But he can view it if it's not procedurally correct. As an example, if whatever the action of the town meeting is requires certain action to have already taken place, or a report to be given to the meeting, and that doesn't happen, then it's out of order. Classic example is zoning amendments require a planning board public hearing and report. If the planning board did not have the hearing or does not give the report, then that motion is not in order unless and until that happens. So that's kind of the generalities, and I'm happy to follow it up with any questions.
Any
Of
questions?
the citizens petitions that we have,
Yep.
is there anything in your mind that is not procedurally correct or is not in the proper form as you see it?
All right, so we have, I think Christine took the initiative to create a policy for how the town deals with citizen petitions. There are some municipalities where they just take whatever comes in and they let the chips fall where they may. And in many cases, a moderator may be aggressive and say no. Or the wording catches up with them or lax at some point in time. It could have been done, it could have been cleaned up, but it wasn't. We try to be user-friendly, reach out to people before they even submit an article. I'm available to sit down with people and go over what they're trying to do and whether they can do it and how they can. nobody approached me prior to the filing, prior to the warrant, opening and close, well, certainly prior to, the warrant opening. Subsequently, as we know, three came in, 3 petitions. Pursuant to the town policy, Brittany Franklin and I set up schedules with all 3 groups of proponents, went over each of the petitions with them to determine what was the problem, if any. And so, again, getting back to what town meeting has authority to do. Town meeting does not generally have authority to pass general open-ended legislation. What you have authority to do, as I said earlier, is to create a bylaw or amend an existing bylaw. So a lot of what was being proposed could fit into that, but as was submitted, it wasn't doing it on its face. The cleanest way, and to add to that, we always had, since my tenure, and during my tenure, the town charter and the town bylaws, and they were organized. However, on Scott's initiative, moderator, a governance committee, a review committee was formed, and one of their strong recommendations was to codify, which was done. So now it's all been put into an organized form. This is the hardbound copy, as you're probably aware, it's electronically available and searchable as well. Well, everything's already in a format. So the cleanest way, if I were doing it, if I were told by the select board or some other committee to draft something, a bylaw or bylaw amendment, whatever, I would make it fit language-wise and format-wise in what's already in here. And so ideally, the warrant article itself should be fairly specific, and be ready to go to fit in wherever it is you're proposing. As opposed to a generally worded statement.
So for example, I think a good example of a proper format would be the school building bylaw article from last year.
Absolutely,
Remember that one?
right.
Yeah,
It had actual sections of the
Right.
existing bylaw that were getting amended and the new wording that was gonna get fit right in.
so I don't see that in some of the citizens petitions.
All right,
See
so
congruent with
we can
that.
talk about one of the 3, which is the one for the financial transparency. His focus when he came in was because he was familiar with the warrant. And based on my municipal experience, as well as Christine's, we said to him, it doesn't belong in the warrant report. There's, the salaries of municipal employees has nothing to do with anything that the town meeting is gonna take up. It's kind of background information or general information. That being said, many municipalities make it available in the annual report. Christine said, I have no problem putting it in the annual report. And I said, if you're going to do that, I'll help you draft a language or a motion that does that. And so we've added a section under the administrative portion of the code that says the contents of the annual report will include, and it says that. So that's a narrower.
That one is.
That one, yeah, that's of the 3, that's the.
Right, so that's clear. It's a narrow motion, and now it's specific, and if it's adopted, it's ready to go,
Right.
and that's shouldn't be a problem. The public hearing one is in general language. It talked about a charter amendment or a bylaw, and in neither case, as it was submitted, did it actually say propose to amend the charter by amending section such and such to insert this, or amend some other administrative section of bylaws. Again, the specificity, it was in general language. So I viewed it as both potential charter amendments and a bylaw amendment. And I expressed my concerns. And they're both substantive and procedural. Charters are governed by statute. Very specifically and it's fairly complex. It was part of the Home Rule Amendment to the state constitution. So you have authority to adopt a charter and you then have authority to amend it. How you amend it depends on what it is you're trying to do. So there are various ways to amend, and there are various officials and persons that have authority to initiate that process. So generally speaking, you can amend your charter. There's a relatively simple process to do it locally with some stated exceptions, which have to do with the executive body. So if you're going to affect the select board or the town administrator, you cannot use a simple process. And so what do you mean? What do I mean by that? Like if you're going to go from 3 to 5 select board members, you're going to give the TA actual managerial authority in the charter other than what she has at the present. Those would require a more complex process. But a lot of other things, housekeeping type things, or non-complex things can be done with a simpler process. But then that breaks down itself into different avenues depending who it is that's initiating. So historically, like with the change in name last year,
The select board
the
change.
select board initiated that, so it just goes on the warrant. Goes to town meeting makes a recommendation that technically they voted, but technically all they're doing is recommending it to the voters. And then at the next annual election, that's a 2/3 vote at town meeting. And then it went to a ballot and it was accepted there. And in between it was reviewed by the Attorney General. So that's that process. There's then a catch-all provision for making changes for various individuals being able to make changes, including a member of the board, select board, as opposed to the whole board, an administrator, or a group of citizens. That's a more complex process in the statute. And in the case of citizens, it requires 10 signatures. It then requires a review process, a hearing process, and then most significantly, the statute provides that it then goes on for the next annual town meeting that is no earlier than 6 months from the date of filing of that petition. When we met with the lead applicant on that article, it was late January. The date of filing was early January. Town meeting is the first Monday in May. On his face, it was not going to satisfy that 6-month requirement. So informed her of that at the time and looked at the bylaw as an alternative and left her to the fact that if you're gonna go bylaw, you gotta be more specific. Or I recommend that you resubmit this more specific. That being said, there's nothing barring you with that general language in an article of having the motion be specific, as long as it falls within the article. So you could still do it now.
I'm really confused.
I'm gonna just pass this around. This is the section of law that he's talking about.
It's
I've highlighted it for me.
43B, section 10.
So Mark, in that last example you just gave, and you said you can go to the bylaw. You can go the bylaw route, you don't have to be as specific.
So the problem, to be perfectly candid, And I said the town meeting only deals with procedural, not with the ultimate legality, so this is kind of a classic example. The Attorney General in their process results in written decisions that are searching. There have been numerous decisions where voters have attempted to do things like this, require certain processes to be followed by elected boards in their respective communities. And as bylaws. And the AG's office has generally expressed concerns about doing that. Two separate concerns. One, that it's inconsistent. Remember, I said earlier the standard was consistent with state and federal law. One is the open meeting law, which states that people have a right to attend but not to participate. Participation is subject to the discretion of the chair. So they view a bylaw like this as inconsistent with that statute. More fundamentally, there are certain elected boards, for instance, select boards, that have very broad authority. They're traditionally viewed as an executive branch of government as opposed to the town meeting. And the AG's attitude is that to allow bylaws like this is essentially a breach of the separation of powers, because you've got the legislative authority impinging on the executive. How the executive chooses to run their meetings within the law is up to the chair of the executive. So there's a number of decisions that have turned that down, which is why my own, I don't have an advocacy position here, but legally, when ed reform came in, school committees were given very broad authority as part of ed reform. They made, as you probably aware, certainly financially, they're semi-autonomous. And the school committee has very broad authority to hire a superintendent and to deal with policies and procedures. And so if you've got the town meeting trying to dictate how that school committee carries out its statutory authority, my sense is that the Attorney General's office is going to have a problem there. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
that's my sense. So
So can I,
I have to be honest, that I question whether the bylaw would ultimately, even if it's in proper form, in other words, it looks the way it should look to go into the code, whether the AG will pass muster.
but going back to the charter process, right? Because I think what has changed from the article is they have now drafted a motion that says that they're gonna go the charter route. Right, so they've kind of, they had multiple choice, now they picked one and said the charter is the method they want to go down.
All right, so just understand, yes, that's what they're telling you now, but there's nothing that binds them to that. They can do anything they want between now
In town meeting,
and town meeting when that article is called, and ultimately it's gonna be the moderator's call, how he addresses it. It may be something that we've all seen before, it may not be. So
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything that impinges or prejudges what his approach is going to be.
yeah. I think you covered the bylaw route pretty well. But the charter route, and I understand they could change, right? But that's a good point. But the charter route, there are in place in law certain procedures, right, that they have to follow. And I think you mentioned two of them that have not been followed.
The most critical one is the statute, as I said, specifies in the case of citizen petitions that it has to come up at an annual town meeting held no later than, but also no earlier than 6 months.
That's this language that says not later than the first annual town meeting
Right,
held at least 6 months
right.
after such
So
final.
that's clearly has
That's-
not been complied.
So in that case, it's alone.
In my opinion, as the moderator would have authority to rule it out of order, because that's procedure that wasn't complied with, much like. The other example I gave you, where there's a statutory mandate, there's certain things to happen, that didn't happen. Or for instance, the community preservation, community, the town meeting cannot act without a positive, recommendation from the community preservation committee. So.
Yeah.
Again, that's it, the statute forecloses. So that's my approach here, that's really a substantial block. And when the town clerk sends that pack, even if it goes through a town meeting. As I said, between town meeting and the targeted ballot date. Within 30 days, not within 30 days, but it has to be submitted to the Attorney General. The Attorney General has to, within 30 days, make a determination. And people have all that backup, not just the bare bones motion.
That's the Form 5 that has to be completed
Now, with a lot of questions.
by our town clerk and
Yes.
certified by Marion Benali. And it's a 2-page form that has all sorts of questions around procedure. Did you follow all these 20 steps?
Right.
And that goes to the Attorney General's office.
And they look at how it passed, the issue arose in this context that we had dropped the ball on the select board name change. But that was under the first part of the very first section A of 43B. It's not on, it wasn't under B. So again, the focus here is, as long as it's on the town meeting warrant by those authorized to put it there, it was a select board. The first, there's nothing formally required of the town prior to the town meeting.
If you're under Section A of that law, you have an easier path
Right, that's correct.
than if you're under Section B.
Right, and that's because they basically, there's a legislation's intent or concern as to who was gonna be amending charters and frankly, if those duly elected wanted the charter changed, it was somewhat easier than people who are not representative of like the select board or whatever. They added some safeguards.
Yeah.
So if perchance it went to the town and it was voted upon, the town agreed to it, these are binding. These are binding, these citizens' positions, or is it non-binding?
If they're improper, if there is authority to the town meeting to do it. The town meeting could have done it itself through its regular channels. Those boards, whatever, whoever has authority to submit articles. If they could have done it, then the fact that it's a citizen group doesn't change the legal effect. But if they don't have legal authority to do it, it doesn't, neither can they take it or give it away. As an example, say you've got a labor controversy going on in the town, you don't like the way certain public safety officials are acting. This has actually happened, so there's direction to either the town meeting attempts to either fire or rehire fire chief, the police chief, what have you, who's been in a fight with the hiring authority, which is generally the select. Town meeting does not have authority to do that, nor would a citizen petition. Citizen petition doesn't add or detract.
So, just so I can understand this,
Now,
a citizen's petition,
Go ahead. Okay.
a citizen's petition is really no different from an article presented by any other source. In terms of its impact, right?
Right.
Provided that it's properly presented.
It's part and parcel of the what the legislature has done in that section whereby a group of citizens can actually call a special town and submit articles for that as well. So it's an attempt to open it up with safeguards because the numbers are higher. The 10 signatures is for the annual town meeting to put an article on, but 200 is when you get into a special town.
So, Ed, do you have, I mean, I think I know what you're gonna ask, but go ahead.
Well, so on one, I'm just thinking on the public hearing one now. So it doesn't pass that 6-month rule, if you will, it doesn't pass that.
Right.
So it's procedurally not correct. And my understanding is the town moderator could say, well, it's not procedurally correct, so therefore we could just, it has to be dismissed. So Scott has that,
He has he has that discretion.
he has that discretion. No, and then based on what you said further. Is the school committee has, broad responsibilities by charter, we even have a legal opinion from the school's attorney. That infringes upon their purpose. Is that in and of itself another reason why it would be dismissed or could be dismissed?
I would say no, I would say that goes to the merits of it. And if that could be brought or maybe brought to the attention of the voters at the town meeting to take into account and vote.
It's certainly something we could consider.
So let me
Certainly,
just.
in our.
Okay.
This is very brief on this point. The whole book is brief, but motions of doubtful legality, and he goes through 3 different types. He basically says, since the moderator's authority is limited to ruling on procedural matters, as I indicated earlier, the moderator does not have the power to rule on the legality of motions, contents.
Right.
Thus, in the first instance, the moderator, and if possible, town council should advise the meeting of the possible consequences of an affirmative vote and should then let the chips fall where they. We basically say, and again, we can open it up to discussion, and part of that discussion could be school committee people. They could, with the permission of the meeting, have their council make a presentation, or they could, with the permission moderator, read the opinion, whatever, but they could bring it to the meeting's attention from an advocacy standpoint, what their council is telling them. And oh, by the way, I am not their counsel, I am not representing them. I represent the town. And although it becomes difficult to determine who the town is in different circumstances, in this case, my loyalty is to the moderator. I'm there to advise the moderator at his request. Not to take over and control it or dictate, but I'm there as a resource if the moderator feels the need to consult.
Yeah.
So any other advocacy has to come from somebody else.
Right. So I think where we are then is that certainly, we have a different responsibility, right? We're there to advise the town meeting on these articles. And we can consider anything,
Right.
including a legal opinion from wherever it comes from. So, unlike the moderator.
Is it, well, one more question, is there any other legal impediment or procedural impediment in that public hearing request? Petition? And other than the 6-month rule?
For the public here.
It was supposed to be, the select board was supposed to hold a public hearing, but again, that's secondary to what I view as a major obstacle.
The 6-month one is the big.
The argument has been made that the warrant committee hearing might suffice for purposes of a public hearing. Whether that's so or not, the big obstacle is the 6 months.
Yeah.
You might.
Jill and Sharon, do you have any questions for Mark?
I don't, you guys covered them. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks.
Peter, you all set with?
I'm really not trying to put you on the spot. What a jerk. But suppose this article were adopted. Or in some form or other that says school committee shall hold a hearing. And the article as written specifically says we can request a hearing on the performance of the superintendent. The school committee says, you can't make us do that. That's outside of what you can tell us to do, and they just ignore the request of 25 citizens. My thinking is there's no enforcement. Is there that I'm not aware of?
I think the remedy would be a declaratory judgment if you really wanted to push it.
Meaning that some group of citizens would have to go to Superior Court seeking an order that the school committee would have us hearing.
That would be equally applicable to the budget.
No, actually, the budget, there's more. There is actually provision in the law for what's called a 10 taxpayer suit. So there is a mechanism in place, but there's been very, very few decided appellate cases involving, or even at the trial involving town meeting moderator errors. And they're all, to my knowledge, have sided with the moderator. Huge discretion in the moderator. That being said, I think that hypothetical is very remote, Peter, because I can't imagine that kind of language, if that were the language, as you said, getting by the Attorney General's office.
I have to completely agree with that.
So,
Any other questions for Mark on legal article motion type stuff before we go into the actual articles? I mean, we'll get a chance to talk more about this as we go through it, but
right, so you done with me?
don't go far.
No, you want me to stay?
I don't know, I think we have beaten you up quite a bit, so I think that's it.
We're appreciative.
Appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Right.
Thank you for coming.
Mark. Go find the Red Sox in the
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. On to articles now. So the first one is the construction of garage. And Rich and is it Katie, Sarah. You guys want to sit at the table and they have there's a presentation they put together that they'd like to take us through, which is the article that. So the select board has voted on this already, and they have unanimously recommend passage. We talked about this at our last meeting. I think we did not vote on this, right?
Right.
No, this is, there's no articles tonight we were talking about it, we're voting on. So this one has not been voted on by us, but the select board unanimously approved it. Anyway, Rich, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
The floor is yours.
Well, I want to thank the Warrant Committee for allowing me to speak and to be given an opportunity to expand a little bit on what Bob Gill had spoken about at the last meeting. And I'd be negligent if I didn't also thank the select board and Christine for supporting us as well. The purpose for me speaking tonight is to provide a little bit more clarity, if I can, and put things into context, especially regarding CUA priorities that we've had over the years. I know you're very busy tonight, so my goal is to be brief but informative. If I go to the next slide, please. So the basic question, and what is it that we're requesting? And simply stated, it's the support of Article 19 that funds the COA garage to protect expensive town assets. And I'm asking for support not only of the Warrant Committee, but also the town meeting at the town meeting. The best way I thought of to present this is to put together a timeline to give you a little bit of context as to how we got to this point in time. Some of the information you may know, some you may not. In 2008, we occupied the building. At that time, it was smaller than the original design by several thousand square feet. It was reduced in size because of the wishes of towns. The result, in fact, the result was loss of ground level storage as well as space for expanded programming.
Excuse me, Frank, could you advance the slide one? You're the next one.
Mention that.
Okay, that's
There
right.
you go. In 2011, a few years later, the COA considered a garage for the fleet of 8, 11, 14 passenger vans. The reasons were to protect the property. And I think most, if not all of us, would probably agree that with our own vehicles, we would rather garage our own vehicles from the elements of New England weather. And the same would hold true for these vehicles, especially considering the cost that they are and the assets they represent to the town. Second reason is to provide more safety on two fronts. One is the safety of the COA staff and clearing off the buses, which are quite large. And secondly, with respect to the space, the only storage that we really have, aside from a few closets, is the second floor, which you gain access via a very steep, narrow, and dangerous stair. I have pictures of it if anyone cares to look at it. So safety is a paramount factor, as well as protection of these assets. And I should have mentioned that I'm a member of the COA board, in case you want to know why I'm here. But I'm representing the COA board, especially Bob here, who's the chairperson. In 2012, we received drawings for a 3-bay garage. However, it was tabled for lack of funding and town support. Next slide, please. In 2016, we realized a significant increase in senior population, and likewise COA expanded program. In 2010, the federal census indicated that there were 2,010 seniors in town. 10 years later, the number had jumped 45% to 3,090. And so with an increase in the senior population, it puts greater demand on our resources, especially our building and our program. And so with that, the COA shifted gears. So our priorities have been, always have been, are and always have been the size of the building, then the space that we have to allow programming, and secondly, the garaging of these expensive vehicles. So we proposed a building expansion. And if you were around in 2008, you probably remember that Article 15 failed at the town meeting. And as a result, we postponed hopes of our building addition. We pivoted to the other priority of ours, which was garaging the 3 multi-passenger vans. One of the things that we did try in good faith was the DPW building, but we questioned use of that, but for a variety of reasons, we were denied. And then in 2021-22, the permanent building committee, the next slide, please, thank you. The next areas, the permanent building committee recommended hiring a site engineer and an architect. We received garage designs, and these designs complement the architectural design of the main building. And then the most important thing that took place during that period was in support of the town and senior housing. The CEO board approved a good faith transfer of 1 acre of land to developer Bob Borelli in exchange for the select board's good faith commitment of not more than $300,000 from the proceeds of the sale to fund that garage that we were seeking. The next bullet says proceeds from land sale must be used on assets. That's an error on my part, my misunderstanding. I was corrected in being told that it needed to be used on capital expenditures with a 5-year expectancy. And the remaining balance from that sale went to the town of Medfield. Then 2023, and there's a topographical error here in my attempt to make this presentation more concise. I made an error on this. That bullet should really say COA requests approval of Article 19 at town meeting. So, in summary, who benefits from the COA land sale? First, the town of Medfield does, because I know, at least in my experience over the last 5 years, I'm aware of the fact that the town is making the best attempt to meet and satisfy the needs of seniors to remain in town. The elder residents with this development next door will have 4 additional units because of the sale of the land to possibly stay in town. And so for a total of 24 units that helped, in my understanding, to meet the 40B requirement. Third group that will benefit is the council on aging itself through the protection of those buses. And as I had previously mentioned, the much needed storage that we would gain from that. The garage, in addition to storing the vehicles, would provide us with storage. It would also provide us with opportunities to use that space, and during the spring and summer season, for example, for activities such as outside activities, barbecues, maybe put a ping pong table in there and give us a little bit of extra space so we can use the building itself for some of the other programs. Then lastly, the council on aging staff with that safety factor, the steep, narrow stairs and the clearing of the snow off the vans. So my last slide is just a plea to the Warrant Committee and eventually to the town residents to support Article 19. That's my presentation. I hope I added a little bit of clarity and context to some of the remarks that were made at the last meeting, helped to explain what our priorities are and how they have shifted over the years, depending on the support that we receive from the town. But I'm available for any questions or comments that you might have.
That garage is 2 stories, and the top story will be the storage, or is it ground level storage?
I believe in both. There's an area above and there's area obviously below, like any garage might.
Where the last is.
Yes. It's basically a 40 feet wide, 34 feet deep, and from the ground to the peak of the building is about 28. I have the drawing if you want to see a picture of those things. Those are the stairs. As you can see,
Looks like an attic stair.
I would have.
there were 12 steps there. When I've gone up, I'm not afraid to go up the flight of stairs, but when I'm carrying something down, it's a little scary.
Can you show the picture, Frank, of the actual garage design? Yeah.
All right, so
3 bays, it's 40 feet deep, you said?
40 feet across,
40 feet across.
34 deep and 28 from ground to deep.
And it's not gonna be heated, right? Or-
It's not going to be heated,
Okay,
but it is, again, it's
So it's
we're
not
trying to
in-
meet the structural design of the building too, so it doesn't look like we put a shed up
Yeah.
inside.
it's not insulated like you do a house or anything like that. It's not
Um,
heated, right?
I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think it would be considered.
Where is it gonna be placed in the property?
If you show a picture of the building, there's another slide. That's the building, and to the left of that red part, the next slide will show you that the left side. You can show me the picture of go back one slide.
The back one slide, right?
Um,
Maybe it's not there.
So just along that front elevation, just with the base.
To the left of the red, looks like a barn, but if you go forward in the slides. Right there,
So the base would be facing us.
yes. That's our original intent, anything can change based on what we find as we go forward, but that would be our initial desire.
And you've already spent the money to design this, right?
Yes, I have the drawings behind me, so we have all, oh, we have,
Well, how much money have you spent and what for? You know, I'm just curious.
I don't know for sure.
Okay,
It was spent from, Friends of the Seniors money, it was not spent.
oh, it's not town money. Okay, okay, good. All right.
Donation money.
Yes,
I also want to point out, Rich, didn't mention, we are actually in the process of applying for a grant for 2 buses. We've been, the state's been delayed a year on the buses. There's a 20% match required for the new buses that we need. And the Friends of the Seniors again are putting up that 20% match, both from that private fundraising and from the COA gift account. So
That's great.
So that they are moving forward with the buses that we'd like to put in the garage.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Any other questions for Rich? Sharon and Jill, any questions?
I'm all set. Thank you.
No questions.
So I'm not sure if it's to you, Rich, or to Christine, but I know that Christine, there's some questions about this care, custody and control provision that. And I think in terms of just explaining for the purposes of this, why the arrangement was required. I mean, it's time, because you recognize it's town property, however.
Right. So in 2016, the town meeting voted to give care, custody, and control of the grounds and the building to Council on Aging. So they had control of those grounds in order for us to negotiate the land to move the Hinkley South development over closer to the Council on Aging. I needed to negotiate with the Council on Aging board because they had care, custody, and control of the grounds in order to give that piece of property as part of the sale. So,
That was a town meeting action.
yes, in 2016.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming tonight.
I appreciate it. What is the next step? You vote on it tonight?
We're gonna vote on it. Yeah, we'll talk about it and vote. We might do that now or later. I'm not too sure how. what
Can
people
we
want to
stay
do.
for that?
Yeah, you're welcome to stay the whole meeting. Yeah, you're welcome to.
Public meeting.
Just-
Yeah.
Yeah, you're welcome to stay the whole meeting. Just might be sitting there.
And be careful on that ladder.
Yeah, thanks.
What do people think? Do you want to vote on this now? Sure. May as well. If anybody want to start, why don't we start with you?
Make a motion to
Yeah,
approve the Article 19 as it appears in the warrant.
yeah.
I support.
Second,
Second.
okay. Any discussion? Anybody want to say anything before we vote? Okay. Peter, go ahead.
You'd like to say yes?
Yes.
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 Sharon
Yes.
and Jen.
Yes.
Okay. Unanimous approval, motion passes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. All right, the next article is Article 29. which is the citizens petition on compensation transparency. We talked about this article at one of our prior meetings. We heard from the petitioner on this, Mark Green, and he came and talked to us. And as you heard from Mark Sorrell, they sort of worked out an understanding on how the motion would be worded on this. It's going to be different than the article. So is there any other questions that anybody has on this? Okay. And then I'd entertain a motion to, I think the motion on this should be that we vote on the actual. The motion should be that we vote on the motion, not the article language.
Yes, if you haven't seen, well, the article is in here,
We don't want to vote on that.
right?
We want to vote on the motion that is in your book.
Yeah, so on, you look on the tab 29 of your book. No, this is, you want to have got it from the Peter from the top. I'll just read it. Move to amend the code of the town of Medfield, chapter 10, boards, commissions, committees, and councils. Article 1, administration, by adding a new paragraph, 10 through 8, contents of annual report. The annual report shall include the wages, salaries, or other compensation of all town employees, and to renumber the succeeding paragraph. Motion to approve the motion as presented in Article 29.
Second,
Yes.
yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Sharon
Yes.
and Joe.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. All right. Making headway here. Okay. Article 28 is the citizens petition on the school committee public hearings. So on this one, we did invite Tim and Kristen, excuse me. Does anybody know Kristen? Kristen's brand new to the school committee. Why don't you guys come up and sit here? And I think so just as background on this, we did send them in advance some questions. And you know, they're here as individual representatives of the school committee, but the meeting they discussed this article at was distributed. It was sent around to everybody. Everybody hopefully had a chance to look at that. All members of the school committee were opposed to this article, and they voiced their opinions in that meeting. But tonight it's just the two of them, so they could speak for what was said and done at that meeting, but they can't speak on behalf of the school committee on anything outside of that, I guess. But the other background is, so I sent you all the questions. They have all the questions. We also circulated Chris's material. That was, she had a lot of things she wanted everybody to be aware of. So all that was sent around, was also put on the website. I thought maybe what we do, Tim, is just kind of turn it open to you to cover. I mean, you have sort of our questions. Everybody thought it was important that we hear from the school committee. This article impacts you directly. And we did hear from the petitioner on this article about 3 weeks ago. So turn it over to you, and anything you want to cover or say, we're more than welcome to listen. So.
Do you want to, Mr. Yearling, do you want to go through the questions?
However you want to do it. If you want to just talk and cover them, talk, or we can go through one by one.
Questions.
Okay.
I mean, based on information that may have changed Thank you for sharing them in advance.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to be concise. More discussion.
The first couple questions were around legal. They were separated between two topics, legal topics. And then policy matters. You know, on the legal ones, we had quite an extensive discussion earlier with Mark about some of the legal issues. Particularly on this article. But the questions that I was interested to hear from Tim on were the questions we directed to Tim are you aware of any other town or municipality in Massachusetts that has a bylaw or charter provision approved by the Attorney General's office that is similar or like this proposal under the citizens petition? If so, provide the name of the town or a copy of the bylaw or charter provision. I don't know how much research you did on this, if you were able to find
We
anything.
researched a little, we also talked with MASC, looked at state body helping together, school committees. We're not aware of it,
You're not aware of anything, okay. Okay,
and they're, even when you just asked in general for legal perspective, it's fairly consistent with what we've shared.
Yeah.
But they defer to the school attorney.
okay. Yeah, so on that second question, we did get your opinion and we shared it with the whole committee, your legal counsel's opinion. On this article. And I also shared with them sort of the additional follow-up dialogue in the email you sent today that went around. So everybody has that additional email. I guess, did you have a chance to reach out to the Attorney General's office, or were you successful?
I reached out to the website and tried to figure out how to get an opinion on this matter.
Yeah.
There was nothing in there.
Okay,
Procedure that's to say this is what we do. I think the time would be just listening to the legal as well after.
yeah,
And it became circuitous, as I also then went and to put the MASC. Needs to check with your school attorney.
yeah,
And the school attorney, I think, is very consistent with what conversation just had. Is procedurally, he's questioning, is it following authority only?
yeah. Yeah,
Which it sounds like we just went through that. That's but the other one was enforceability. Charter is asking us, or the petition is asking us to do something that's against the, it's outside of, and we
right,
when that and the perspective.
right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean,
I would even,
we just wanted to ask that question, because just in case somebody, was able to reach somebody. I know they're reluctant to give verbal opinions. They like to see the actual, article or motion after it comes out of town meeting. And, they go through their own process and they have a precedent that they have to, establish before they give. They look at all precedent before they give any type of opinion. Peter, do you want to add anything to that, or your
No.
experience?
The AG's office, their staff, I think, very good attorneys from that. Retired now, but I used to have some dealings with them. They won't, for the most part, give out, they opinion over the phone. They dealt with this in the context of select boards. People trying to direct a select board to do something, and they will, that's not done. They've said they don't, to their knowledge, it hasn't come up in the context of the school committee. They'd have to do some research, to determine if the school, how much the school committee is distinct from a select board in terms of trying to give them direction. So they weren't prepared to offer an opinion of the following, which they said certainly they're consistent with regards to trying to direct the select board was that it's not appropriate.
There seem to be quite a few cases.
Yeah, there are several cases on that.
Okay, no, that's helpful. I mean, maybe we could shift gears. That's a policy matters. We probably can share your perspective on those questions. Just in general, maybe you could just, I mean, talk to how do you get public input? How do you make sure you're listening? I'm just sure that.
Now, so, we have public input at the opening of every meeting.
Mhm.
We have in the last year updated that. There's a little bit of confusion in that. You get public input for items that are not on the agenda. And then you have to wait until the agenda comes up to get public input on those items. And there was some discussion around the accessibility of some people to have to stay for the entire meeting. Share that. So we have made some adjustments so that anybody can provide public input on any topic at the beginning. And our track record, we've been consistently doing that. So that works pretty well. We can send a note to SC chair and email Medfield, email at medfield.net. That gets circulated to all of us. They can direct email to any one of us, call any member. In our meeting, 14th, one member even shared his address. We want to hear from you. That's the general rule. We do have, and there are special meetings, special events that go on tonight. Some of the members are working on the strategic plan. A few weeks ago, we had a whole big event to try to get input. That's fairly typical. We have a couple public forums a year, one on the budget, typically one on school choice. We've also, this year, the community has been a huge area of focus for me and for the chair. We've opened up some new things. We've run in office hours, trying to do 2 to 4 per week, kind of like this, where we only have 2 members, so that there isn't a forum.
Yeah.
We've been trying to get out to some of the PTO meetings, so they can see us in a session where they want to talk about these topics, but not in a forum. So in general, we're very accessible. We want to hear.
Yeah. I mean, we did participate in one of the strategic planning sessions, and I think they mentioned that there was an online survey that you had done, and there were over like 1,400 or 1,500 responses so far. I think there were 2 more days to go, so I don't know how many more they got, but.
Yeah, I don't know the numbers.
Yeah.
Michelle's been working hard on the communication.
Yeah.
But those are out there. And then, there are times over the years that I've been on for, I think, 7 years. Like we had a discussion about the Warrior logo forum on that. There were several around masks, what we wanted to do with our policies during the pandemic. During the pandemic, over and over and over, public input was extended because of the demand.
Yeah.
People wanted to be heard, and we wanted to just many times going in with second hour. So while there is a policy that says, just like somebody brought up, we can choose to not hold public input. Policy, I haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Other than a workshop, which is a slightly different type of event. But when there's demand, we've consistently extended public input.
Yeah.
We had it on a book banning topic where that, that was not a public forum. There's a lot of folks we want to hear. And it's just how it works. So, you know, that is, I think, more, I would view that as a common sense approach. At least we've taken the time to have.
I think a question I would have, being very new to all of this, is there any reason to believe that somehow the school committee is not providing the same mechanisms that other committees in town do for feedback? Because it feels fairly consistent to me anyway, in terms of the public meetings, people's ability to come and speak, you know, share their opinions, talk to their elected officials about matters of concern for them. To me, it feels very consistent with how other boards in our town are behaving. So I guess the question I would maybe ask in return is there any reason to believe that, you know, school committee is somehow, you know, acting very differently, where it feels as though there's, you know, lots of opportunities there. And I think that myself and other members of the committee feel as though the purpose of us getting into this and going through the process is to act as that bridge and that, you know, that ear to what's happening and what families care about, and to bring that information back and share that, raise those concerns and discuss them in that forum. So again, very new to this, but that is what I see happening.
Well, I think the fact that you're new to this is, to me, very important because you've just gone through an election. And from my perspective, the purpose of the election is to address accountability. So the fact that each one of the members, so we're all appointed, but we don't have the level of accountability that you do because you put your name on a ballot. And I know that, you know, Tim, you were opposed and you know, and you were elected, you know, in 2 years ago, you most recently. So my question is really, in your experience as a candidate, was this issue, did you have to address it? Did you address it? Did it come to you and saying, because you just said, why is there accountability issue with the school committee? How did that come in your experience as a candidate?
So that's not a topic that, you know, was brought up to me. I think I've talked to families about a variety of things as relates to the school and programming and so forth, but never concerns about the transparency or the ability to work, you know, or raise topics, I should say. You know, like I requested this be discussed and it wasn't discussed or so forth. You know, as I've seen it, if there are issues being raised, those issues are being given an opportunity to be brought forward. Again, I don't think that there were any examples found. I think Michelle spoke to this at our meeting that would show that was not happening, or that was not the case in some way. But I agree with you, and I think it's a little sad when you look at the polling numbers and you look at how few people actually show up and vote in our town, which is a challenge as our community needs to deal with. And the lack of people wanting to even engage in the process. But to your point, that is the forum, that's the avenue. And that is a chance for people with different views and opportunities to get in and talk about this. As you saw, there was no discussion, there was no contest. We had two positions, we had two candidates, and that was it.
Well, thank you for
Thanks for
running.
taking one of the
There
positions.
used to be a time when there was a lot of interest in being a school committee member. And there was a lot of, you know, protested.
Which would be, you know, right.
That'd be great,
Right,
yeah,
I mean, that's what you want.
right, exactly, yeah. So, I mean, I think we talked about, you know, a couple of these already. I think this question of denying formal request. Like, has anybody come to you with I guess any type of request, like, you know, I mean, not a Facebook post, but like an email or something like that, saying, I want to have a hearing on XYZ topic or something.
And typically what I've seen is they'll come to us with the issue, the topic.
Yeah.
That whether it's to individually address each chair, we'll try to address it with them one-on-one. Sometimes, you know, we get as much as possible. I think we try, and this is a general theme, we're trying to have it handle it locally at the school. For all the right reasons. And, you know, in some cases, they either try it, it's not the way it is. But in general, we try to discuss it with the individual. In some cases, they're good points that we need to bring up. We try to address it to, could be to an agenda item on a meeting, because, hey, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah.
Or it could be, okay, we've talked through this and we may agree to disagree.
Mhm.
You know, we're not always gonna. There's plenty of decisions that are 60-40.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen anything where they say we would like public forum on topic X. Public forum, there's a lot to that. But I'm not, that's not something I'm seeing. That doesn't mean it could be to another member.
Yeah.
I was not in a chair or vice chair until this year.
Okay.
So I don't see anything.
Well, just as, so, you mentioned that there was a meeting to discuss changing the logo. How was the decision made, if you remember, at the time, to, yeah, let's have a open meeting and discussion.
At the time, the chair thought it was, I mean, given the nature of that request, and the need, and given where what the impact is on the town, the culture, the history, divided opinions. Chair thought that would be an effective way to gather. You know, what happens in a public forum is, where public input, we can listen. General rule don't respond. Public forum becomes more of a discussion. As a general.
What's your view on, you know, in the proposed article, there's a 25 person threshold to, maybe this is sort of a two-part question, to initiate a request for a public hearing. And so, you know, I'm interested in your view on that, I guess, and then, you know, what do you think could happen? What are the potential implications of if this article was successful? How would that impact how you operate your meetings, I guess?
Yeah, I think the 25 to me can go outside the library or the dump on a Saturday on the day for signatures. That's my opinion. I always look at things from what bad things happen if this were to pass. I would look at it as there could be those, or 25 citizens could have an agenda of a certain topic that we eventually would agree to disagree. They could ask for a public forum every single week. They're controlling the agenda for that forum. We were also thrilled with the two members that we had them willing to run. I don't know that I'd want to run, where I know I have to also, in addition to the business, the meetings where we conduct our business, now we have to go to conduct the agenda of whatever those 25 people are. I'd like to think in general, we're already operating. Nobody wants to get run out.
Right. Yeah.
So you know, I'm somebody who discovery and listen. That's how you gain consensus is by listening. So,
Yeah.
you know, I don't think it would change how we operate until people start asking for it week after week after week.
It has the potential to interrupt your meetings and business, I guess. Potentially. If it got abused, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
We are as well. We're elected officials, you're appointing all of us.
Yeah.
And we have so much time. And we want to focus our time.
Things that help the kids.
Yeah. So I guess there's a question here on, do you feel the proposed article reflects a sense that in the past, the school committee has been unresponsive to concerns raised by Medfield voters If so, how would you tell voters you intend to be responsive to concerns that they raise? Anything you want to say about that? Or-
I think what I just described, we
Yeah.
want to hear from folks. We have many avenues in which we can hear from folks. We acknowledge there are 60-40, yes, like I say 60-40 decisions where you're not going to please everybody.
Yeah.
We're going to do the best we can. And it's so much more productive. A lot of times it's an individual who may have that conversation, at least we understand their perspective as to what they're asking.
Yeah.
I think as a townsperson and taxpayer, I have not personally nor had anyone in my network of people say, I've not been heard, I want to talk about this topic, no one's letting me talk about this topic. I've heard frustrations. And I've had conversations, I had a great conversation with a parent on Saturday, and we probably talked for an hour about this particular topic of interest, to this individual, which I have a follow-up with Dr. Marsden on tomorrow on that topic. And to me, that is the whole method of this, right? This person raised this, they actually sent it to SC chair. I reached out, we had a conversation, now we're taking the next steps and saying, you know what, you're not the first person to bring that up. And I think that's the other part that's important, and that's why you do have the committee in place and you have these discussions, as you are looking for themes, you are looking for the things that follow up. And that's where you go to those areas and you think that there's something building up here. This is not just a single person's opinion. There's something here that we need to go and take the time and investigate. And I think that's part of the role. That's part of listening to it all and filtering and figuring out, like, yeah, there's something here. We've heard that now on a couple different occasions. This warrants further discussion.
Yeah, no, that's good. I assume like any committee, I know the chair sets the agenda, right? But I assume if your members of the school committee bring something up that they want to add to a future meeting.
Yeah, it's part of the agenda. It's future
That's-
agenda time.
That's a future agenda topic. You talk about that all the time, right?
Yeah, you can't go into the agenda, you do as
Right.
what's driving it.
Right.
And then again, sometimes it's okay, that might be some additional information that member needs. Could be Dr. Marsden, it could be whoever.
Yeah.
Sometimes they address it.
Yeah.
So Tim, just gonna ask you, I don't want to put you on the spot, you are on the spot. You ran, you're elected, you're the chairperson, you're on the spot, okay, so, but. As I look at the school committee, now we've got 3 members. 2 in their first year, one in the first year, you 2 just beginning. And new chairperson. Can you give a little flavor in terms of your approach? In terms of these issues of addressing town. Inquiry and participation, just from, it's you, it's Steve just articulated, as a chairperson, you. Make the final determination with the input of all, but as I see the changing dynamics, I'd be
Yeah,
interested in hearing.
I'm glad to. I mean, I'll try to be brief,
Sure.
but it's been asked. I think. I was there as the new member right before the pandemic. During the pandemic, there were a lot of decisions that needed to be made during short periods of time. It wasn't by design, but I do believe we were a little more inward focused in some. There's so many decisions coming at us. It was just what we had to do in order, in some cases, to get the schools open. As I was running last year, my honest, probably my number one driver is we need to turn ourselves back upside down. It has to be outwardly looking as our first goal. And as vice chair working in MMA, that's been our top priority. That's where we started to say, we need to have these community outreaches, just some of the office hours, trying to get out and try to assign each member to a PTO. Get out there. We brought the site council in. The site council are the members, the citizens who represent a given school. We wanted them there with the principals to kick off the year, which was the first time, because we want to make sure they have this. So it is a topic that's number one. Is nobody likes that narrative out there. that we're hard to get a hold of, we're closed, and we're not listening. I think the actions don't reflect that. And I'm not just, as I talked to Dr. Marston, I said, hey, how do you feel about continuing some of these things? Because we want to bring site council members back to talk about those things. I'm gaining support from them. As far as new members and whatnot, we can't talk about that. So that is something that's front and center. You went through as we went through the school, that was challenging. For all the right reasons, we need to be outwards with this.
Well, actually, I mean, as one person, and I have observing the first school committee meeting that you attended, I thought it was a good meeting in terms of very open, and I thought the participation of each of you, not to be condescending at all, but to say it looked like it was engaging, and but it was great to have and to have new members is good.
Yeah. So, new members.
I think there's an opportunity to do more, and I don't think this is a ding on past committee, but I think there's an opportunity as a committee and as a community to be more forthcoming with some of the data and information too. So, raise the topic at the last meeting, and there's, related to private school attendance. Okay, so what I'd like to do and take responsibility for is to get information about what the real numbers are, what's actually happening in other districts, and bring that back and share that as part of a public meeting. So that, people don't feel as though something was dismissed or that they didn't, understand how a decision was made. And I think that there's maybe an opportunity for just more of that awareness of how a decision did come to fruition. And, show me that you looked at the information. I think there's a bit of a trust issue that needs to be overcome. And I think that everybody on the committee is, really wanting to make sure that that's a non-issue.
I did listen to that meeting where you brought that up. I thought that was a great suggestion to go and
We'll just figure it out. Let's
figure it
go
out.
get the
Let's
information.
find out why and ask people and get some feedback. Yeah, no,
That wasn't the feedback wasn't my idea. That was a citizen's idea. Great idea. Let's go do it, right?
yeah.
No, and I think the issue you bring up is very fair in terms of the trust issue is something that permeates government society right now, and it's what we're all dealing with. And I applaud both of you for putting yourself out as elected officials to address it. And I hope that we can do things that will encourage participation and encourage people. And Steve and I and the rest of the Warrant Committee are working on educating people on the warrant, just to see if we could, not have a quorum issue. For example, let's just start at ground zero. But I think if you're putting yourself out there.
So the last question on that we had asked was about the evaluation process for the superintendent. I don't know if you could talk to that,
Yes.
how that works.
It's right now it's every other year. And I think the superintendent is the one, just as I understand it. That evaluation is in public, it's by law.
It's by law, not public.
It is public.
Oh, it is public.
Yeah, so every evaluation is part of our meeting.
Yeah.
And those meetings, we do gain public input prior to those meetings.
Yeah.
Or as part of those meetings. But it's done, when I started, it was every year. We've moved over to every other year. So you do have to review the goals, which we typically will discuss.
Yeah.
And then
So do you follow a similar process to say like the select board when they evaluate I think they forget how they go about it. I think they get some third party to send out.
there's a process with MASC that we
Yeah.
that they recommend that we adhere to.
Yeah.
There's kind of a form that each member of the committee is going to go through with a written response that we then would submit to the chair. The chair then does the best job they can to bring that information together.
Yeah.
And then outline that as part of the meeting process.
And that's
We
that,
don't see, just because of form, I don't see everybody's comments
right,
for all five of us.
right,
But I found that they do a excellent, I feel like my voice is heard.
Yeah.
In the, the ones that I've been part of. But that's one, it is, I think that would be where I just have a couple other concerns about it, other than the legal side. It does create an environment where there's a lot of misinformation.
Mhm.
But even looking at the warrant or the petition, it calls out that you must do this, including for the for the superintendent.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if I were somebody who wasn't in this role, I might assume, hey, they have evaluated the superintendent behind closed doors. It's the last request for hearings related to school personnel.
Yeah.
Other than the superintendent or students will be generally prohibited. Requests for the superintendents. Those are public today.
That's public
So
information.
if I read that, you might, that was one of Peter, one of your questions. Well, how does that happen? Well, it's a public meeting. When your question earlier was if the directive was that the superintendent's evaluation must be given public. That's already in place.
Hmm.
But people kind of hear this thing and they may come to incorrect conclusions. And that's what concerns, one of the things that concerns me.
Mhm.
Is people can say what they want to say.
Yeah.
Because it's a microphone in the town meeting.
Right,
The narrative is changing. So we don't, personally, I don't love that. I think that forum can create more divide. I don't love the amount of resources that we have to spend managing something that it costs money to get legal things.
Mm.
And if this is approved afterwards, it's going to cost more money to try to figure out how we navigate. It's something that it's going to create a lot of time cycles of energy on something that I represent the school committee, but I don't see that we have an issue.
Mhm.
If there was, hey, everybody in town is saying this is an issue. I think that, look at our policies. We are accessible. So, I think that's a fine line. Because we need to address if one citizen thinks it's an issue. We need to talk it through. But the amount of time, energy, and resources that are there to manage this thing is going to be significant.
Yeah.
So if it's procedurally maybe outside the bounds, the way it's being brought forward. If it was approved, we can't necessarily enforce it. Then you start to beg the question, okay, so at least I'm asking the warrant committee what their opinions would be. Why would you want to say, hey, this is a great idea?
Yeah. That might be a good segue to Jill and Sharon, do you have any comments you want to make or questions for Kristen and Tim?
I don't. Thank you very much, though.
I don't either. I think you guys covered a lot.
Okay. All right, anything else anybody else wants to cover? Talk about? Anything you want to add?
No, thank you. I think when you shared some questions, it helped.
Yeah.
You one, make sure we were aware. Two, give us some questions to do, some thinking about it, give us time to give opinions. And just taking the time to get help.
Yeah.
The questions were well thought out. Even reaching out to the Attorney General caused us to ask for a second question. So I think I have an appreciation. I'm sure you're all looking forward to whatever 2 weeks or next week.
May 2nd.
Yeah.
Week from today. Can't wait.
No, so no, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for putting yourself out there. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. So we have some comments online. Guess I will read them. They're from Jerry Potts. there seems to be a misunderstanding between a public meeting that allows input and a public hearing. Having a public forum where you can accept or don't accept public comment is not the same as holding a public hearing. Public hearing requires notice, needs to be given, so this is different than just allowing public comment at a regular meeting. It also means that public has a chance to get heard. Public hearing needs to be planned in advance and promoted so it wouldn't disrupt the meeting. There have been a number of recent circumstances that decisions were made without public input. So I think holding meetings after a decision is made doesn't really help. And we also point out that the school committee discussed this article at the last meeting, but Tim and the members actually all said publicly they hadn't even read the article, yet we're against it. Okay. You want to comment on that since you were named?
I listened. I said, I don't have the article in front of me.
Yeah.
Or you can look at the exact words. But I think I said, does anybody have it to read it?
Right.
So anybody can, if I'm not communicating every single word, read the article.
And you had watched our meeting.
I watched your meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
I watched the meeting.
You heard
I read the
directly
article.
from the petitioner what the article was about. Okay.
So that's, that's an example where it concerns me about the misinformation. Everybody on the committee.
Yeah.
The article.
Yeah. Okay.
I did not read, we did not read the citizens petition.
Yeah.
Meetings.
Yeah.
Just
Just-
comments, Stephen.
Yeah, just a minute, I want to get through this next question and then I'll give you a chance to talk, okay? From your husband. Jerry, the second question is, I would also say that if 25 or 50 people request an item be addressed, this is not one person who doesn't feel listened to. It would be a significant number of people who want to be heard on a topic. I find it surprising that the school committee would say that if 25 people or more asked for a hearing on a topic, they would ignore it. Or if they want to be viewed as responsible to the public, they would fight this article. That's all this article is asking. So, I mean, I don't think I've heard those exact words from you when you talk, but I think the point's made in terms of
Right, follow on.
I didn't hear you say you would ignore, comment, but all right, so that's Jerry's comments. Let's maybe just open it up to, you guys have questions or comments? Questions or comments?
So just as a follow on to the 25, when you said the 25 would be stand up and put Starbucks and get that. Is there a better number? So I think the point is if there's enough interest that it seems like, okay, this is something that maybe should be heard. 25 is the number, a better number, 50 a better number. Because I agree, well, actually, if we stood outside of Starbucks and tried to get signatures, these are the stuff anybody can get signatures, but if 25 is too.
You could go to the dump and get 25 signatures.
So what's the right number? And if that's the issue, can be wanting to be heard and then making it.
Yeah.
You see, it's too easy. I don't want those two to get.
Okay. Thanks for your comment. Chris, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just again, this term misinformation gets thrown around a lot. Factually, the citizens petition that the article was not in the meeting packet for last week's school committee meeting. It wasn't in there. Correct?
Correct.
Yes, so it was not in the packet. Just want to make sure that people know that it was not in the packet. Secondly, I think it's really important to know that so much of what happens at every school committee meeting is at the discretion of the chair. So you could have one chair who makes a decision one time, leaves and having public input, then you could have a different chair. And I want to bring up a scenario that happened with a previous chair in which there was a whole argument that the way the public comment now is handled at school committee meetings is for equity reasons, that people can go at the beginning of the school committee meeting, they can make their comments. Well, there was a very long period of time where the chair made the decision that they would only take comments if you were sitting in the room. No comments. The chair's policy was no comments would be taken over Zoom. Is that correct? So if you're talking.
Please direct your questions to me.
Okay.
Don't direct them to other
So
people.
if you're
Direct them to
talking
me.
about equity, so many of the arguments that have been made to the legislature to make sure that we continue with hybrid Zoom meetings was for equity reasons. But I can tell you that school committee for the longest time basically told everybody, you have to come and you have to sit in front of us if you're going to make public comment. We are not going to take it over Zoom. So how is that now that they're making an argument that this whole public change in public comment policy is to be equitable? How can that be? I mean, you can watch all these previous meetings and see that that was the policy, that was the procedure. So there were a lot of people that would have loved to comment on Zoom on really important issues, but they were not allowed to do so. The chair made that call on her own. Now the chair changed, and that protocol changed. But there was a long time that people were shut down. I'll give you another example. So we had a situation where a lot of the community, and this is still, people are still talking about this, people are concerned about ratings and rankings dropping here in Medfield. All of a sudden, we had a 20-minute presentation at a school committee meeting where it didn't even show up on the agenda. They had a whole conference call, and they wouldn't allow public comment. So here you have a topic that's been all over social media. People are talking about it left and right, about our decline in rankings and ratings. People are concerned about it. They brought in a guest speaker that took up almost more than a half hour of time. Guess what? It was an open meeting law violation because it never appeared on the agenda. So here you have a topic that people are very, very concerned about, would have liked to have been able to participate in, and they didn't even put it on the meeting agenda. That's factual. That's not misinformation. So there's a need for this because there are issues and things that are important to people in the community. I don't care about the 25. It could be 100 for all I care on that now. There's no real, but there is an issue here where we have a school committee that does not respond to large issues in a way that people really need them to respond to.
Yeah.
And there's a track record of this. And as far as election goes, I would challenge anyone to talk to people who have run for elections in the past and to understand what that process was like and what they had to deal with and the level of unethical behavior to the point where you let someone sitting at a desk campaigning publicly on record for someone running for election. So I'm just saying what that does, that's what discourages people from running for election. It's not the ask for somebody to have a public hearing. It's the behavior of what happens in the behind the scenes of these elections. And that's documented.
Okay. So thank you for your comments. I think we've heard from Chris early 3 weeks ago. We've heard from the school committee. You've gotten all the materials. And I think I kind of feel like we've beaten this one to death. I don't know what people feel, but I think
I believe we should proceed to a vote.
to a vote. Yeah. Everybody feel that way or do you
Motion?
have more questions? There's a question over here.
It's not a question per se, but before I register my vote, I wanted to for the record, because I mean, you know how I'm going to vote, but I'm not necessarily sure that will be interpreted the right way. I would prefer to take the point of view of the people who are moving this petition on trying to distill sanity, because I think that's not demonstrably clear to me. But I would say that it does seem to me that there is some concern out there, and I take what the school committee said at the face value, really trying to address that. I hope that's true, and I also think that the ballot is the place where this, I mean, setting aside what feel might be to hear on the ballot, that's the place where it's decided. But given, I was, as we were talking, yeah, it may be true that you get 25 people sign a piece of paper and don't, but if 25 people sign a letter to the editor, hometown legal, an issue, I would hope that issue is still related to school committees and about. That would be probably what we're talking about. So I'm just hoping that whatever number threshold is, the commitment that was evidenced here is legit, because I think, you know, I don't think a movement like this happens out of nowhere, in my experience. So nevertheless, I think, I'm not sure this is the right thing.
You want to say something?
Yeah. Because as I read the summary of the citizen petition, and talks about the school committee confirms its freedom to conduct a public hearing as it deems advisable. And then it goes on to say, well, you know, what is really advisable? I think it comes down to one thing, it's the schools committee judgment. They're making a judgment, does this warrant a public hearing? Does this warrant just talking amongst ourselves? And we elect this body to make those judgments. I'm afraid if this were to pass, any topic, whether it's on the agenda, not on the agenda, anytime you get 25 signatures, because in their judgment, it's worthy of a broader discussion, it's going to slow down the process of the deliberations of the school committee. It does infringe upon their responsibilities, as Andy Warren, his letter pointed out, and he was the attorney for the schools. I think this is beyond a slippery slope. I think this could just get out of hand very, very quickly, because there is no level of materiality. There's no specificity in this that says if I'm going to talk about finances or question, it's going to be material. It's not going to be a, I'm going to talk about something that's worth $100. You can question, and because it doesn't say anything, you can question decisions that have already been made in the day-to-day business that the superintendent makes. And we can question that because, you know, in my judgment, we should have had a meeting on this, a public meeting. So this scares me. I think what you just referenced, if you had 25 signatures, 25 people sign something in the newspaper, then I'm sure that the school committee would say, well, maybe we would better take a closer look at this. But to have this change the charter, I think is beyond a slippery slope. I think it would be a terrible, terrible mistake.
You guys want to say anything?
Ed just said a lot of
Okay.
what I might have said.
Yeah.
I think you elect people to make decisions and, you know, sometimes they make good ones, sometimes they make terrible ones. Chris, I know you'll hate me for what I'm about to say, but you were referencing the state legislature in part of your remarks. God, you want to talk about a non-responsive body that doesn't respond to people? That's the one, my God, that you can force them. I mean, how many years have you been waiting for them to change the estate tax in the state so that we're not the outlier among all the states? Or I've been waiting for them to. I used to, I'm retired now, but riding the MBTA, God's punishment for original. You know, I just, you can't get the legislature to do anything. They in their wisdom don't want to do. I don't think at the town level, the town committees are that unresponsive. I think issues bubble up. Like the decision to change the warrior logo, they'll have a meeting and discuss it. So I don't. I really understand you're coming from. You wish they were more responsive. Probably on certain issues that matter a lot to you, and I respect your passion very much. Good for you to be involved with our governments, but I really cannot, in good conscience, support this.
Sharon, do you want to say something?
No, I think I can review that.
Sharon, do you have anything you want to add to this discussion?
No, I was just trying to intervene in the other discussion because I think it got extremely off topic for what the article is, because the petitioner was pretty upset about that. So I'm glad that we're back on topic. I agree wholeheartedly with Ed. I think that there's a lot of other things that are going in behind the scenes on this, and I'm definitely against it as well.
Jill, you got anything you want to say, or?
I don't have anything to add to the conversation. Obviously there's been a lot discussed tonight. So I mean, I have similar sentiments, as far as, you know, I think the responsiveness is there. I think that there's probably issues that public hearing would be beneficial. And I think, you know, based on previous years and experiences, I mean, I would hope that anyone elected today and serving on the school committee would take that into consideration moving forward. But I think technically, I don't think the warrant and the article is written in a way that I could support it.
Mr. Slime?
Well, no, I think just to say that, I agree with Ed's and all the comments. I just don't see this as an alternative to an election. I think if there are people who are not responsive, then we vote them out. And the fact that this was a petition that was written in the middle of an election cycle, I think that speaks to me, and I just can't see this as the appropriate way to address people who are accountable. There is accountability in this particular case.
Yeah, I guess I would agree with a lot of everything that's been said. The only thing I would add is, I would add to the discussion that it's one of our responsibilities, if we think an article is inconsistent with state law based upon advice we've gotten, if it's not in proper form, if we think the Attorney General won't support it, we should consider that and advise the town.
Right.
And we have an opinion from school committee, legal counsel, we have advice from our general counsel of the town, as well as research on cases that Peter's done with in the municipal unit law area. So, for all of that, I guess I'm not supportive of this argument. So.
I just want to make, I have one more comment to make, because I want to be clear, I am not opposed to citizens petitions. And I think that we spend a significant amount of time on articles, both financial and in other objective issues. We're entertaining citizen petitions throughout. We spent a great deal of time on those. So I encourage them, but I think that there's been guidance. And I think that at the end of the day, I'm one person with one judgment, but in my responsibility on the Warrant Committee, I feel as though this particular issue is not appropriate in the citizens petition.
So why don't we take a vote, take a motion? Anyone make a motion on this article?
Motion to, I guess my motion is to
Motion to dismiss.
dissent. To
Dismiss.
this article as presented in the warrant. Article 28.
Sorry.
Second. Okay, right,
If they smell word, they don't see this.
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes, because we're doing dismiss, right? Sorry, it's getting
right.
yes.
And Jill,
Yes.
okay, the motion passes unanimously. Okay, so that one done. We have two more to go. So on Article 27, which is the water conservation private well restriction. This one, I sent around an email from Eileen Murphy, and hopefully everybody got that email. Let me just get it out here for a second. Okay. So basically, you know, Eileen did send an email to me and she said that, you know, she was deliberating on Article 27. She mentioned to Christine, you know, she was talking about it in that you know, she contemplated on the meeting we had about the article and you know, I think some of the things that got presented and discussed at that meeting sort of struck a chord with her. She, you know, took a step back and realized that they hadn't had a public, any type of public meeting or hearing or you know, forum or any kind of, you know, outreach on the article and so she wants to make sure she hears from everybody. So she's going to ask the select board to revote the position for the Article 27 prior to the start of the annual town meeting. And the vote currently stands 2-1 in support of it. So my guess is that it will at least be 2-1 against it, since she seems to be changing her view, but they haven't voted yet, but they, you know, the email, I think, sort of gives you that impression.
This is.
She wanted us to know this.
Procedural question.
She wanted us to know this before we voted, so she sent this email to us.
Christine's here, maybe this is better than Christine and you. Once the warrant's printed,
Yeah,
can the select, it was the selectmen's article, proposed article. Can the selectmen say, hey, we want to withdraw it, or does it still have?
well,
to
no,
go before-
well, right now, they took a vote initially to support it. So right now, the warrant says, select board supports, recommends passage. What she's saying is she's gonna have another meeting before town meeting and revote that vote. And so, assuming that vote comes out 2-1 for dismissal, then that would be the vote that, you know, so we would, the first positive motion, or the motion would come from us. And then if it's not a positive motion from us, let's say, assume we vote to dismiss. And that they also vote to dismiss, and the article, you know, ends there. Okay. If the warrant committee and the sponsor both agree on dismissal, so it's the things to stop. It's where they don't agree, you know, we say, for example, we voted to dismiss, but the sponsor doesn't agree with that, then there'd be a dialogue, a debate, you know, discussion through it. So that's kind of what she's saying in her email, that she wants to revote this before we get to town, right before that. Is your question?
Or selectmen, now, town meeting.
Oh, yes, of course.
There's always one right before town.
Yeah, we always meet right before town meetings. Our meeting is 6 o'clock that evening. And they'll announce that town meeting for the, even though it was printed in the warrant, they originally approved it. And then voted to be able to.
Yeah, she says in here, she wants to continue the dialogue on this article and go through a normal process so that perhaps, who knows, maybe a year from now, it'll come back, but I always like Westwood's approach to articles. They have they vote, their warrant committee votes for indefinite deferral instead of dismissal. So anyway, this one, if we had that, would probably fall into that category. So anyway, is there any questions on that email that she sent? Or, okay, so I would entertain a motion to vote on this if anyone has any questions.
I'm not sure what the motion would be.
To dismiss or to approve. So we have to vote. Right now, we haven't voted on it. So we either have to recommend it or we have to dismiss it.
Motion to dismiss Article 27 as presented in the warrant.
Second? Okay,
Yes.
Yes,
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 Yes.
And then just a point of privilege. If Eileen hadn't sent that email, I actually agree with what she was trying to accomplish. But if she's saying she wants to withdraw it, which is how I read that email, I'll go along with her, so I'll vote yes.
okay. Sharon? Can't hear you, you're muted, Sharon.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, and Jill?
Yes.
Okay, so Article 27 is unanimous on dismissal. All right, so the last article is Article 30. And we have could you guys come up and sit down, and I'm sorry you had to wait to the end.
but I'm sure it was entertaining. So it's not like it wasn't.
We're getting there.
It wasn't like it wasn't entertaining, right?
It's all entertaining. When I first moved to
Hold
town
that.
32 years ago, I sat next to a person that had been in the town for 32 years. He said, "This is the French way of time." Just wait.
And now you have, here you are.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard from you at all, so we're interested to hear what type of legislation you want to enact and how you want to, what your citizens petition is all about and.
Sure, I could start and
Yeah.
Jesse can jump in and, so Jeff, I guess you could say you could have heard from us through the domain, we've done a bunch of things, so this started off as a petition article. Way back when, and then based on some meeting with the town council. The advice was, hey, why don't you just go to the select board and say, we'd like to do something like this. This does not mention select, this is just ask the town. We met with town council, we went to the select board. Initially, the first meeting, they were, I would call them unanimously happy about this. And asked us to go speak to the various boards that relate to the subject of water. So we met with the Board of Health, Conservation Commission, Water and Sewer. And we did also meet with other agencies charged with the watershed and the watershed. We were trying to educate ourselves even more. Came back to the select board and hearing, and between the time that we met with the boards and met with the select board again, and watching some of the footage of various committees, committees like this, there was some sensitivity about our committees, and there was a little bit of dialogue between the energy committee and then what the select board was, I would say, a little angry with some operations there. And at the end of the day, I'm not blaming sensitivity about committees. Committees are important. It's a part of the democracy and the citizens committee especially. So they decided to vote, and they took a vote and they voted against us be involved with them directly. And their guidance was, why don't you take some time a year, you can operate, you can operate as a citizen, independent citizens, any one of us can do that. The two watershed committees started off as citizens committees. And there they are. So here we are. So we have this article. And we believe it's an important subject. And so, yeah, we have some things to think about. We've been thinking about, yes, I'm sorry, I had to travel all this time. My schedule has been pretty tough, and I wasn't able to meet you guys.
Yeah. That's good.
The intent was really to provide education, relevant information for discussions. Some of the discussions in town get fairly emotional. And so trying to educate people on sources and uses of water during emotional discussions is pretty darn effective. So to provide a resource where, you know, we've got some people that are familiar with hydrology, with conservation, and, you know, have that be available as a resource. Just as an example, I put together after I commented in the last meeting, you know, just to give you a visual of what might an educational piece look like. This is about groundwater and private wells, and the previous Elaine's proposal is maybe not going to happen. It's still, I think, important to have an educated discussion. So here, you know, because you have a private well doesn't mean you have private water. We draw from 2 aquifers in Medfield. We all draw from the same aquifers. That is our town water as well as private well water. Last year during the drought, the Charles River, which is one of our primary reef sources, was at 1%. So that means everybody's water table is down. Your increased risk of contamination goes up. So there's, you know, it's a public health issue, it's a water access issue. So just having that information available as part of the discussion would be helpful. And I think to the, you know, our proposal was to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Health was also very interested because I think they feel that there's a lot of topics that come at them and they're not maybe as well informed on all of those topics as they would like to be. So that was the thinking in this committee, but fully understanding that there, you know, there's a concern that there's too many committees and how do we make sure the committee is staffed on an ongoing basis and we have people filling the role. Totally get that. So the intent was not to be an antagonistic group and, you know, provide oversight over anyone, but rather be to help have a more educated discussion around, you know, topics where this comes up, because every time you page something, it creates an impervious solution that impacts, you know, where the water goes and what's in that water. So that was our intent. And, so we're, you know, at this point, the select board is, you know, not ready to jump in full bore. But we can certainly continue to operate, but still it is easier to operate in Medfield and to get time on boards and agendas if you are a recognized body. So, you know, Jeff and I have both been in town for a long time, so we recognize that.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful that we could, you know, have that as part of how we operate.
No, that's like, but I think of what is it? I always forget the name of the, what's the energy committee that's not a town committee?
Sustainable
Medfield.
Focused on solar.
They're I think a best practice on how to go about, you know, making an impact, you know, in their own way. They have their mission, right? So, but they did it, I thought, effectively, without being formal. So maybe in the next year you could maybe do some of those things if you still want to work on being a committee, you know, that further down the road, convincing the selectmen to form a committee further down the road. But question I have is, when I read your article, it sounded to me like I got the impression that the select board's not doing what they're supposed to do. That there's something not being done the way it's supposed to be done, and therefore we need this committee. And so I'm just curious if you can comment on that.
I'm curious how you got to the select board. Dover's is through their Board of Health, so we
Okay, but the select board oversees the boards, right? I mean, they oversee all the committees, so they all report to the select board, right? They direct, you know, what the committees do and they report back to them. And so the impression I got was that there must be something you don't like about what's going on. There's got to be something that you don't like about what's happening in town with either these other committees or the select board or the way they're going about coordinate. I don't know what it is, but you're not happy.
I think it's the opportunity, you know, when water's gone, it doesn't just come back.
Yeah.
And so it's the concern that we may be having some of these discussions without all of the facts being presented, or, you know, the opportunity for education or the opportunity for grant funding to do some studies that, you know, everyone's trying to just respond to the issues at hand.
Yeah.
And this is something that should be ideally more proactive, but fully recognizing that a lot of these boards don't have the resources to do So it was more a concern for the future and the ability to be proactive and have that resource available.
Yeah.
Than a, hey, you're not doing the job.
And both of you have some background in this area of water, right? You work in. Don't you
I have a
tell us?
degree in civil engineering and groundwater hydrology specifically.
Okay,
So, and it's on town planning and water sources.
Worked in environmental health and safety for 25 years.
okay.
I would say, you know,
I mean, have you tried, I mean, maybe this is not the right question, but have you, I watched some of you, I didn't watch all the meetings, but I watched a couple of them. And have you looked into perhaps trying to get on some of these boards that, I mean, water is one of these things that's regulated, heavily regulated, and there's different responsibilities in different boards, right? So I'm sure they would love to have you on boards. I don't know, I'm just guessing, but have you thought about that? Oh,
I mean, I joke, you know, I'm not sure about that because, you know, they're busy.
yeah,
All our boards are busy. Look at, you know, it's hard to staff boards, people departed, you know, and, you know, here we come in and, you know, we're worried, we have this subject that we want to talk about, water, we want to see the risks to water. And they're, you know, if you, maybe they're worried about administrative stuff or many aspects of what they do on a daily basis, just to keep things cranky, right? So, but, you know, we always wanted to remain collaborative, not combative, and, you know, try to work with boards, and that's really where we were. But, you know, we can certainly ask to be invited to meetings and board meetings, and we can sit in, but and we can hope for the best. The select board did say, if you can't get on a board meeting, let us know. You know, personally, you know, we can all have a personal feeling about water. And everybody in this room will be different. I can just tell you that you can have a town, not have great schools, and it's still a town. You can have many other things in the town. You can have a town and not a great fire department. You can't have a town without it. And I'm not saying anybody's not doing a good job. Everybody's busy doing a lot of good things. And we praise the boards for their time and what they do. But we think citizen education and awareness, you know, I've gotten a bill for 35 years. And you know, to pay my water bill. That's a great opportunity to understand, you know, so use that as an appropriate means of communicating. Maybe that's just an example, but last year was pretty critical. And it was emotional because you had different people and you had the whole well thing, like water well. And the educational pieces, if people just understand a little bit more, then they sort of get it. That's why they're saying I should do this or that. You know, with our expertise, we can be helpful.
I think education is a good thing. I mean, that's something that everybody could use a little bit more of. Yeah.
And one other thing, just kind of just specifically, I think it was 2002. Bill might know there was a study to look at the risks in the town. Right? What are risks? All kinds of stuff. Road traffic, the businesses that operated there. The businesses that operated in 2002, many are not here anymore, right? So there was a lot of review to see what are the risks, just to understand, how do we understand how to manage it. Right? And so there's just things, you know, you can do.
And in response to that, with being on the boards, I think one of the fundamental issues here is water crosses multiple boards. And there isn't currently a good vehicle for that sort of crossing the different boards and looking at water more holistically. So that was one of our attempts to say, how do we work, you know, across the multiple areas, Board of Health, you know, Concom.
But I mean, do you, I mean, I ultimately view that as this Board of Selectmen's responsibility to make sure that there's good communication between committees and that they're talking and working with each other. If they all report to the board of selectmen, then they should be making sure that. That's why I say there's something that you don't like about what's going on, and it sounds like that might be one of the things is coordination. But I know, Bill, you're raising your hand. You want to comment?
Hi, sorry, Chair. We're actually at our next meeting, be appointing individual board members as liaisons to specific committees. So a bunch of the board of health. One to the select board, one to the conservation committee. So we'll have individual members of our board as specific liaisons, just like you liaise with the different.
Yeah, that's what we
committees that
do.
come like that. So
Yeah.
we saw that as a model, and that's what came from that last select board meeting. That if in a way that is an aid to formalize that connectivity, so that so that the select board doesn't have to sit back every day and say, is everybody playing well together, right? They just need to like institutionalize that, and we can have something that cuts, across, multiple boards and committees. I think that's what our board is going to do is to establish that.
So just like putting it in as a citizen's petition, I feel like we.
Well, I think you're a
changed-
catalyst. I think it's I think good for you and that,
Attention to
and
it.
bringing that up, because not to say that it wasn't on somebody's radar, but in fact it was that you put it front up. So good, congrats and thank you. I mean, that's really, it's to your credit. It doesn't always have to be the formal document, this is the evolution, but I think you've really given a great catalyst. And I said, that's exactly what you
Yeah.
want to see from the citizen petition. So thank you.
I mean, I think, the only other thing I would say, this has been helpful to have this dialogue and hear from you. I think there is some, I think you heard earlier, at the start of our meeting, there's some issues around executive separation of what the legislative body can tell the executive body to do. Particularly, there's a lot of case law, municipal law, that decisions that have come out around that exact issue, that the town meeting telling the executive body, ordering them to create a committee or to take certain actions. That's legally, that's a problem. So, I think, and I don't know if you got some feedback on that from Mark when you talked to him.
I don't think it was mentioned tonight either, because it wasn't covered when he was talking about it, the petition on it was so.
Well, we didn't spend a lot of time on your article, but the issue of, we did talk a lot about the issue of executive separation of executive branch from legislative branch. And this falls into that category. I could share with you, there's a lot of cases on it. Where, and then they're all over the place. So, they range the gamut. Peter, what was the South one when you said the one about?
What it was, they were trying to order the South Wales Select Board to do.
Yeah,
I'm not remembering that, sorry.
yeah. It just came out in November, but they all cite the same section of law. There's multiple towns and they all have similar. And the attorney general comes in and they cite the same section of Mass General Law and they say, look, can't do this. This is, and so it seems pretty established. I'm not a lawyer, but when I read 3 or 4 different cases of towns and the rulings, it seems pretty straightforward. And so, so I think you would have difficulty, even if you were able to get some type of article in a format where you wanted to amend the bylaw. I don't think you're there yet, but I think you would still have difficulty making a direction for the Board of Selectmen to take action and having town meeting take that vote. That would probably be difficult. So I think my suggestion, maybe try the other route, but maybe trying to work it have to try the carrot route, I guess.
Yeah, sure,
Yeah.
I mean, actually working independently.
Oh, yeah.
Have a little,
More freedom,
There's not a lot of
Yeah.
yelling back and forth, it's like.
You don't have to deal with
You know,
open meeting laws, you don't have to deal with minutes.
Honestly, I think you just wrote them.
Well, I think you can see that, I mean, even we talked tonight about the number of participations in the elections, people who are committed and participating want them. You know, and it's not always gonna be, okay, yeah, that's your idea, we'll do it, but I mean, that's the collaboration, I think, and I think that you've got a great example, so, and I think it's a positive result is coming, as I say, as a catalyst for moving things forward, and so I think that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll say, we're gonna meet with Bill. Not their next meeting, but the one after, because.
Oh, good.
Not available, so, and we'll share.
That's good.
Really just.
No, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm sure he
There's
didn't.
probably an output that, that enhance or amend, communications that we make. We are going to be putting together more comprehensive, we remain educational program across types of media types. But the actual content itself, I think that there is going to be, just like there is with that other energy committee, it's called again.
Sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. That forms like an interesting model because I think that citizens do look to the town for official information that where we are regulatorily compelled to provide and operate and type of licenses and permits and some of the real hardware sort of stuff that is there. And then that can always be appended and enhanced with the part that common public can really understand, right? Instead of that boilerplate that comes from the Massachusetts Drought Advisory Committee, whatever they call themselves. That's the body that hammered down last year. They put us into level 4, not the town sort of itself and its stream flows, but so we had to have specific language for that. But that doesn't mean that that's the end of communication and education that's there. So I think that if you choose to provide content or collaboratively, we can be. It's not that we are the official channel, but the stuff that would come through the town becomes endorsed by the town or the board of water and sewerage. The people who I look for information from that channel will get it from that way. That might not be the only way that they get their information.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you make up. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No,
Well,
please.
my question is, I sit on the sustainability boards for and groundwater is part of that conversation. So my question to you is, what's your opinion on why it's not a conversation for our sustainability board?
Do you live in Medfield?
I do.
I mean, I think that's an individual, everybody might answer that differently.
Yeah, no.
You don't get your question. I just think that if I personally, I can only speak for myself, thought that the town of Medfield is doing an A+ on water conservation, quality, wildlife protection, all that, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
So I just, you can look back at just, I'll think, go back years, and just, you can see records, meetings, minutes, and you can just all kinds of things and get a pattern and say, all right, what are we really caring about? Well, this is important, obviously, but what are we not caring about, right? So, and that was really, I'm trying to keep that.
No.
I think there's a certain complacency. We see the Charles River.
That's
Water there, people are saying, we've got water, we're fine. And then we heard, I put on our little information piece there. Like I kept hearing, oh, there's springs all around. Look at the Cleveland Club spring. That's a well that Cleveland Club dug and is very contaminated. So it's not a spring, but yeah, you know, you hear about it like, oh, yeah, we used to go get bottled water there, we're paying for water. I think that is part of it.
So, I mean, if we're on the other side of the country, right, I mean, this is a whole
We're
different.
next to California, right?
So,
Yeah,
is it just that complacency where I turn the faucet on, the water comes, it's really good, I can mow the lawn, it's really.
and I get water restrictions late in the summer, but it's not, you know, all year round. And I don't have grass, that's so it's like, you know, don't have a rock coverage.
We generally take water. We've all grown, none of us in this room have ever turned the tap on, said, I don't think anymore. This happens to other towns that maybe they're more well-based, the well dries up, you know, nearby, but you do take it for granted, and that train that goes by 5 times a day, whether we have control or not, or get in their face and say, what's up? You sit at that track long enough, and see radioactive waste goes through this town. Right there, the placards right on that train. Train loads of it. It's not my job to stop and to look at it. It's not Bill's job, it's not George's, but collectively, we should be thinking about that, putting it on an agenda and saying, let's at least talk to them and say, we don't want Ohio to happen. Because if Ohio happens and that train goes over that river, which leads to the whatever, wow, that's a danger. That's a big deal, but it's all a little. Businesses have changed in 20 years.
Absolutely.
Are we overseeing? Where's the waste, the water, the oil? I don't know. What are they making? Where they're stocking it? There's a lot to do. It's too much for any one committee. That's why it becomes a certain multiple opportunity with people to say, all right, how can we help?
Would you have? You say you have to have 5 or more members. But top of mind, do you have 3 other individuals on yourselves and beyond?
Yeah, throughout this process, we've got probably about between 6 and 10 who are extremely interested in being part of this.
So now I'm really not trying to put you on the spot. Are you saying they're gonna go the way of the selectmen, or is your intent to sit here now to go the way the selectmen suggested, and you therefore don't want to pursue this amendment, this article, or do you still want to pursue this article?
Ideally, it's easier to get grant funding if it's coming from the town or this body of the town. And so if you're going after grant funding for education even, that would be better. But we'll continue to pursue this either way. It's an important issue. And it's just,
It sounds like they want to continue working on these issues. It may not, it may not be in the form of a committee sponsored by
That's
the
not
town.
quite what I heard. I heard you sort of love to be a committee because it's easier to get grant.
I know they would like to, but they have some work to do to convince the selectmen.
Right, and we could be a committee, a private citizen committee. Go fund these side, there's enough people interested in funding it. We know there's options.
Yeah. All right, Jill and Sharon, do you have any questions?
I don't.
Yeah, I know it's
No.
getting late, sorry. Thanks for hanging in there. We gotta vote on this.
this is how it's gonna be a town meeting too, right? Because we're just dead last before the
No, you're in a lottery, I think.
Okay.
Well, I don't know what Scott decided, but my guess is you're probably in the lottery along with everyone else. At any rate, should we vote on this? Anybody want to add anything more to the discussion? I feel like we talked quite a bit about it. Yeah.
Motion to dismiss Article 30 as written in the warrant.
Second. Okay.
I vote yes.
I love what you're trying to do. And I think this is absolutely, having this document that could be promoted under any one of the board of health, even any one of those several boards that may impact, that would be great. But at this point, I would vote to dismiss it.
Yes.
And I'm a yes, but I I echo Ed's, comments about what you're trying to bring attention to here. And would encourage you to keep moving the ball forward.
Yeah, I am fully agree with the intent, and yeah, I know.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, that people in this country, those who are certainly this part of this country, with water incredibly for granted. You may or may not have been there, and I said, at a previous meeting, I've been to communities where they don't have running water and they don't have clean and sanitary conditions. So, and of course, I've got a long way from that, but, so I strongly support the initiative we're pursuing. I just don't support creating another. So that's.
Jill, are you,
Yes,
yes? And Sharon, it's a vote to
Yes.
dismiss. Okay.
Yes, vote to dismiss.
Okay,
Thank you.
we are unanimous. Thank you.
To Sharp King.
Keep it going.
Jeff.
Thank you very much.
This is that. Sounds good.
Thank
you. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thanks a
it.
lot. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Sorry. Oh, good, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we have a little bit of business left, I'm sorry. So here is, in fact, we gave this out to somebody, some of you, if you already have one, then.
Is Brent?
Yeah, I got it.
I don't know if you guys got this or not, but this is a list of the articles and whether we're having a majority or minority report. We have to get this to Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, we've now voted on everything. The first page, everybody's name is listed under majority report because these are all very routine financial articles that we had unanimous votes on. Okay, so there is no minority report. The book, the binder that you have has everybody's name next to the article, and the motion is in the book. If you want to study up on that.
Thanks,
Okay.
Bill.
Thanks, Bill. So if you get to Article 19, we just voted on that. Jill, we were all unanimous. So Jill, you'll do the majority report on it. Okay. Now, on Article 26, we were split on that one, 6-3. And Mather, I initially had assigned this to you as the majority report, but you voted in the minority. So I'm assuming you and Jill and Sharon can fight over who wants to do the minority report.
I'm happy to draft it up.
You want to draft it? Okay, I'll put your name next to this. Okay. All right, and then Bob, did you volunteer to do the majority? Okay, so Bob's gonna do the majority report for that noise bylaw. Okay, and I guess the other ones are pretty straightforward because we were all unanimous, right? Everything was unanimous, so we don't have a minority report on any of the citizens petitions. So that's easy.
Good job.
Got a question, Ed? I can see you're thinking.
Yeah, I think
here.
Steve, come back. I was wondering what the Sultan scroll was.
Trailing on logs by one. I'm reliably informed.
On those citizen petitions, all of which are unanimous with yes, do we have to, or should we have some type of item on why?
Yeah, there'll be a majority report.
Oh, okay, the majority.
There'll be a majority report
Yeah.
to dismiss,
Oh, okay.
and we'll have
All
a,
right, okay.
yeah, we'll have a report.
All right.
Yeah, and Bob and I were assigned to those, so we'll have to write those. A lot of these reports, the routine ones are written by the town for you, so it's easy. Your work is done. For some of the non-routine ones, if they're sponsored by the select board, you guys, did you do motions or did you do reports for like the photovoltaic, the solar ones? Is that something that you guys Or do we have to write something up on that?
Yeah, that's gonna be a positive motion. If you voted in favor of a positive motion, will come to the warrant.
Right, but we have to draft it. Okay. Some of the other ones you drafted already, right? The motion.
She got all of it.
Motion could be in.
The motion's in.
Oh, okay, that was my question. Is it already in there? It's already drafted.
We don't have to elaborate on the motion.
Draft.
Okay, got it. Even the citizens petition.
No, yeah.
I was gonna say, that would be too good, right?
Anticipation.
All right, so we have to do those. If Bob and I will work on those. Any questions? One last informational item. I am going to the school building committee meeting on Thursday to present that an updated version of the presentation I gave to the warrant committee back in October on financial modeling for a new school building. So if anybody's interested in that, I'll send that around. A draft of it
I can
around.
see the thing, check, but I haven't seen the agenda yet.
I'm as anxious as anyone to get out of here, but on the agenda itself.
Yeah.
Meeting, there was something about 55,000 legal fees.
Oh, yes, we do need to do that, right?
I'll leave that in my report.
Okay, you need to come up and talk to us then. Forgot about that. Thank you, Peter. Oh, yeah, while Christine's coming up, just so everybody knows, we are gonna meet. We always have a meeting before town meeting in the school library. So town meeting starts at 7. What time do you guys usually? What time to select?
Post for 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock you posted? Okay.
I think we're.
I don't think we have a lot to talk about, so if you don't get there at 6, it's not the end of the world, but.
Yeah.
6:15.
So are we having a?
We are having it, yes, we're posting a warrant committee meeting for 6 o'clock. On Monday nights in the library. It won't be a long meeting, but usually we just gather there before we go into the main auditorium.
Talk about the red sox.
If we do it, because in case like if the select board is actually gonna vote on something. So that happened to us last year. We voted on the school building bylaw article. So,
Because they were changing it.
Yeah,
as we speak.
yeah. So Christine, please take us through these last items.
Okay, let's start with the first one, which is from the town clerk. And that is in the amount of $3,000. And this is, we had to print new general code books this year. So we actually, in addition to the supplements we had 5 new books printed. We thought it was important that each member of the select board have a code book that they could reference it. It is online, but some of us like to have our actual books. And then we do get reimbursement from the state for our state elections. However, they've refused to reimburse for police details. So we did have to include that in our election. So the town clerk is requesting a $3,000 reserve fund. And the current balance of that reserve fund, we have not tapped that at all. So the current balance of that is $170,000.
We have to vote on each one of these? Okay. We need a motion.
Motion to approve $3,000 for costs associated with printing updated versions of Medfield code and holding town elections.
Any questions? Okay, second? Second. Okay,
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Jill
Yes.
and Sharon.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously.
The second one is for the annual town report town meeting. And this request is $15,322.62. And this is we are actually printing all 4 years of town reports this year, 2019 through 2022. So there's an increased expense in that. The prior years, we have had appropriations for this, when we did not spend it in 19, 20, and 21, that goes to free cash. In addition, we had an increase in the printing, postage, and delivery of the town meeting warrants that everybody got this past weekend.
Motion to approve $15,322.62 for costs associated with printing and delivering town meeting warrants and printing annual reports for fiscal years 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022.
Second,
Second. Yes.
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
Jill
Yes,
and Sharon.
Yes,
Okay, that motion passes unanimously. And the last one,
And the last one, and this is the largest one I've done. So this is an increase for our legal budget in the amount of $50,000. And I can break those costs down for you. As you all know, we had several ongoing issues this year. We had ongoing personnel matter, the police investigation, and then we had an arbitration case with the police department as well. So we're requesting a $50,000 transfer for legal bills this year.
55,000.
50,000, sorry. This was not a typical year for us in any year that I've been in Medfield, so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, because in
the agenda
the
says
agenda it says
55.
55.
You know what? I was able to revise it and bring it down to 50.
I was just going to give you credit.
When you,
Yes.
when you do the motion, it should be 50.
To bring it down.
Okay.
Is there any questions by anybody on this one?
But just to add that these are some personnel issues, all right, and they're confidential in nature in terms of all of it, but Steve and I have viewed the invoices and
Yeah, we did look at all.
So you're asking us to trust you?
They're dedicated, what, both police issues, correct?
There's police arbitration, there's police investigation. And then there's an HR.
And this is my question.
Not police.
No, this is all the legal counsel, by the way. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
motion to approve $50,000 for legal fees.
All right,
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Jill
yes.
and Sharon.
yes.
Okay. Anything else that you need from us?
I would like to give you a quick update on where we are with the annual reports before we get to town meeting on Monday. As I mentioned before, 2019 and 2020 were sent to the printer. The printer has informed us that they are experiencing supply chain and staffing issues, so they will not be able to get it back to us in time for Monday. However, 2019, 20, 21, and 22 will all be posted on the town website and be available digitally for everybody to review. And we will announce on social media once all 4 years have arrived in print. But they are anticipated.
And the plan is that will be online before town meeting,
Yes,
so that we could still,
you will still.
we
Yeah,
still have this Article 1 that we could,
absolutely.
because I know somebody who will ask the question at town
Yes,
meeting.
and I talked to several people about it today who had expressed some concerns about it, and they understand why we don't have the paper copies there that night, but they are available. We did get the proofs for 2 of them, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, is
Excellent.
that it?
Don't forget your motion books for
Or
Monday. Yes,
Jill and Sharon, you want to bring theirs to?
I'll bring yours to town meeting.
You have your
We'll
motion book.
Changes on anything that you changed tonight on the votes and on the citizen petition, I'll have all that stuff ready for you, so there'll be some changes in that. We'll have them ready to go. Monday.
But you'll bring Jill.
I'll bring it.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, make your motion.
No, let Sharon and Jill make these motions today.
There's only one, right?
Well, one at
You can fight over who wants to make it.
Go ahead,
The other
Sharon.
one can
Go,
second.
Sharon.
Motion to dismiss because I turned into a pumpkin 53 minutes ago.
Second.
Jill? There you go.
Okay,
Yes.
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 yes,
Yes.
Yes.
Jill
Yes.
and Sharon.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for